Cheating wife stories. I never thought I'd be the kind of man to suspect my wife. Lily and I had always been close, partners in every sense of the word. But lately, something had shifted. It wasn't a glaring change, more like a subtle vibration, something beneath the surface of our routine. And I couldn't shake the feeling. It started with small things. Lily, who'd always been an open book, began taking her phone calls outside or wearing headphones, a habit she'd never had before. Whenever I walked into a room, she'd abruptly stop typing on her phone, her finger hovering nervously over the screen. Once, she left her earbuds on the kitchen counter, and I couldn't resist picking them up. What I heard changed everything. A man's voice crackled through the tiny speaker, "Doesn't he suspect anything?" My blood turned cold. I froze, the earbud still pressed to my ear. There was a faint murmur, a laugh, Lily's laugh. My Lily. I yanked the earbuds out like they'd burned me. A rush of emotions overtook me, confusion, anger, and something even worse, doubt. Was this a misunderstanding? Could it have been work-related? I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. But the unease lingered, scratching at the corners of my mind. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it wasn't what I thought it was. But that moment planted a seed, and from then on, every little thing she did seemed suspect. The inside jokes she chuckled over while texting, the way she evaded my questions with casual dismissals, it all began to add up. I told myself I was being paranoid, that this was just stress manifesting in the worst way. After all, our marriage had always been strong, hadn't it? But as I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder, what if I wasn't imagining it? What if something was truly wrong? The next morning, I resolved to find out the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. Something about that voice, "Doesn't he suspect anything?" kept replaying in my head. If there was nothing to hide, then why did it feel like there was? And if there was something to uncover, I knew I couldn't live with not knowing. My journey into doubt and discovery had only just begun. Once the doubt took root, it grew quickly, consuming my thoughts at every turn. Suddenly, past moments I had shrugged off as insignificant came rushing back, each one now tinged with suspicion. Lily had always been social, but her recent behavior stood out. She'd started working late more often, citing urgent deadlines and unpredictable clients. I remembered her missing our anniversary dinner last month, something she had never done before. At the time, she'd apologized profusely, blaming an unexpected project. I had believed her then. Now, I wasn't so sure. She'd also developed a newfound interest in her appearance. Lily was always beautiful to me, but lately, she'd been going the extra mile, buying new clothes, experimenting with makeup, and even taking up yoga. When I complimented her on how great she looked, she brushed it off with a casual, "Just trying to stay healthy." It wasn't just her appearance. Her phone had become an extension of her hand, always clutched close, always buzzing with messages. She would laugh at texts, but when I asked who it was, she'd dismissively say, "Just a friend," or "work stuff." Those evasive answers felt like a wall being built between us, brick by brick. I couldn't help but replay a specific memory. A few weeks ago, I'd walked into the living room to find her on a video call. She quickly ended it, claiming it was just a coworker. But the way she smiled before noticing me, the way her expression shifted when she realized I was there, stuck with me. It was the kind of smile she used to reserve for me. I started to question everything. Was I imagining it? Was I turning into one of those paranoid husbands who see betrayal where there is none? Or was there something deeper going on? It wasn't just her behavior that haunted me, it was the lingering echo of that voice. "Doesn't he suspect anything?" Those words gnawed at my mind. The way they were said, almost mocking, sent shivers down my spine. Who was he? What was their relationship? And why did it feel like my wife was slipping away from me, By the end of the week, I felt like I was living in a fog. I couldn't focus at work. I couldn't enjoy my evenings. Every moment spent apart from Lily felt like an opportunity for something sinister to unfold. The worst part was not knowing. The uncertainty was suffocating. I knew I needed answers. And I knew that Lily wouldn't give them to me willingly. If she was hiding something, she wouldn't just come out and confess. I had to find out the truth myself. I hated the thought of spying on her. It felt like a betrayal of trust, but wasn't she betraying me first? The next step was clear. I would watch, I would listen, and I would find out if my fears were justified. My marriage, my peace of mind, and perhaps even my sanity depended on it. The decision to spy on Lily didn't come lightly. I wrestled with the guilt for days, but the gnawing doubt left me with no other option. I had to know the truth, even if it meant crossing a line I never thought I would. I told Lily I wanted to upgrade our home security system, citing the rise in neighborhood thefts. She didn't question it. Why would she? It was a practical suggestion, one that fit seamlessly into our otherwise quiet suburban life. She even helped me pick out a set of cameras from an online store, oblivious to my real intentions. The cameras arrived within a few days. They were small, discreet, and offered high-resolution footage, perfect for what I needed. I spent a weekend installing them, focusing on areas Lily frequented, the living room, kitchen, and even our bedroom. I justified each placement with plausible excuses, convincing both her and myself that I was doing this for the safety of our home. What I didn't tell her was that these cameras had motion sensors and live streaming capabilities. They would alert me whenever there was activity in the house, allowing me to keep an eye on things even while I was at work. The first few days of surveillance were uneventful. I began to question myself, wondering if I was overreacting, letting paranoia cloud my judgment. But then, on the fifth day, something happened that made my stomach drop. It was late afternoon, and I was sitting at my desk when I got a notification from the living room camera. Curious, I opened the live feed on my phone. The screen loaded slowly, my heart pounding as I waited. When the image appeared, I saw Lily standing in the living room, speaking to a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, with a sharp suit and an air of confidence that made him seem completely at ease in my home. Lily seemed relaxed, even happy, as they talked. There was no physical contact, nothing overtly incriminating, but the familiarity between them was unmistakable. They weren't strangers. I turned up the volume, straining to catch their conversation. But they spoke in hushed tones, and I could only pick up fragments. The timeline? The man asked. It's still on track, Lily replied. Good. We can't afford any mistakes. Phase 1 is critical. Phase 1. What the hell were they talking about? My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. The conversation ended shortly after, and the man left through the front door. I replayed the footage several times, analyzing every detail, but it only left me with more questions. When Lily returned that evening, I tried to act normal, but the image of her with that man was burned into my mind. Who was he? What was phase 1? And why did she seem so comfortable with him? I decided to keep watching. If this man came back, if there were more clues to uncover, I needed to see them. The doubt that had taken root was now a storm, growing stronger with every passing hour. This was only the beginning. It didn't take long for the man to reappear. 3 days after I first saw him on the camera, he returned. This time, I was home, working in my upstairs office, when my phone buzzed with another notification from the living room camera. My pulse quickened as I opened the live feed. There he was again, standing in my living room as if he belonged there. Lily was with him, her body language as relaxed as before. They weren't sitting, just standing close, their voices low and deliberate. I pressed my ear to my headphones, hoping to catch their words. We need to be careful, the man said. I know, Lily replied. But it's hard to keep this up. He's starting to notice. My heart pounded so loudly I almost didn't hear the next part. Just stick to the plan, the man assured her. We're too close to stop now. Lily nodded, biting her lip. I just don't want him to get hurt. He won't, the man said firmly. If you do your part, everything will go smoothly. What the hell was going on? The conversation ended as abruptly as it had started. The man handed Lily a thin folder, which she tucked under her arm before escorting him to the door. Once he was gone, she stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door, as if gathering her thoughts. I watched her carefully, my mind racing. She didn't look guilty or panicked. Instead, she seemed resolute, even conflicted. I didn't know what to make of it. After she disappeared from the camera's view, I went downstairs, pretending to get a glass of water. She was in the kitchen, the folder nowhere in sight. She smiled at me, her expression calm and unbothered. Hey, she said. You've been cooped up all day. Want to take a walk? I forced a smile. Sure, just let me finish up a few things. As she turned back to her task, I scanned the room, looking for the folder. It wasn't on the counter or the dining table. She must have hidden it. But where? The walk was uneventful, her demeanor as normal as ever. She talked about work, a new recipe she wanted to try, and plans for the weekend. I responded automatically, my mind elsewhere. Later that night, while she was in the shower, I searched the house for the folder. I checked her usual hiding spots, the bottom drawer of her desk, the back of the closet, even her favorite book on the nightstand where she sometimes tucked things. Nothing. Frustrated, I returned to my office. My mind replayed their conversation on a loop. Stick to the plan. He won't get hurt. What plan? And who was the man? I decided to review the footage again, hoping I had missed something. As I scrubbed through the video, I noticed something odd. When Lily walked out of the living room after the man left, she was carrying the folder in her left hand. But when she entered the kitchen, it was gone. I rewound and watched again. This time, I caught it. As she walked past the hallway table, she slipped the folder into the drawer beneath it, quick and seamless. My hands shook as I closed the app. She had hidden it right under my nose. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I'd find that folder and finally get some answers. For now, I had to act normal, even as the weight of her betrayal crushed me from the inside out. The next morning, I woke up determined. I waited until Lily left for work before heading to the hallway table. My hands trembled as I opened the drawer. At first, I didn't see anything unusual, just some mail, an old receipt, and a pack of batteries. But then, tucked beneath a stack of papers, I found it. The folder. I took it to my office, locking the door behind me. My heart raced as I opened it, bracing myself for whatever secrets it held. Inside were several documents, neatly organized. The first page was a list of names, none of which I recognized. Next was a detailed chart, filled with dates and what looked like financial transactions. My stomach churned as I flipped through the papers, each one more cryptic than the last. Then, near the back of the folder, I found something that made my blood run cold. It was a photo of me, taken outside my office. My car was in the background, and I was holding my briefcase, looking down at my phone. The timestamp in the corner was from 2 weeks ago. Why was there a photo of me? Who had taken it? And why was it in this folder? Before I could process it fully, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lily. Hey, running late tonight. Don't wait up for dinner. I stared at the screen, her casual message feeling like a slap in the face. Was she meeting him again? Was this part of phase 1? I spent the rest of the day in a haze, alternating between anger and confusion. By the time Lily came home that evening, I was barely holding it together. She greeted me with a warm smile, as if everything were perfectly normal. "Long day," she said, kicking off her shoes. "How about you?" "Same old," I replied, forcing a smile. My mind screamed at me to confront her, to demand answers. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not without more proof. The opportunity came later that week. Lily had gone to bed early, claiming she had a headache. I stayed up, pretending to work in my office, but my real focus was on the camera feeds. Around midnight, I saw her get up and leave the bedroom. She moved quietly, heading downstairs to the living room. I watched as she retrieved her phone and began typing furiously. Moments later, a car pulled up outside. My chest tightened as I recognized it, the same sleek black sedan the man had driven before. Lily opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. Unable to contain myself, I crept down the stairs, keeping to the shadows. Through the window, I saw them standing close, their voices too low for me to hear. The man handed her another folder, and she nodded, slipping it into her bag. I couldn't take it anymore. I flung the door open, and they both froze, caught in the act. Lily's eyes widened, and for a moment, no one spoke. "Ethan," she stammered, stepping back. "It's not what it looks like." "Then what is it?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. "Who is he? And what the hell is going on?" The man remained silent, his expression unreadable. Lily glanced at him, as if seeking guidance, before turning back to me. "I can't explain right now," she said, her voice trembling. "But you have to trust me. Please." Trust her? After everything I'd seen? The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my composure. "Get inside," I said through gritted teeth, pointing to the door. Lily hesitated but eventually obeyed, leaving me alone with the stranger. "Who are you?" I asked him directly. He smiled faintly, a chilling calmness in his demeanor. "Just someone trying to help your wife," he said before turning and walking away, disappearing into the night. Help her? What did that even mean? My hands shook as I locked the door and turned to face Lily, who stood in the living room, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan," she began, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. I'll explain everything. Just, not tonight." I stared at her, the woman I thought I knew, now a stranger. My world was unraveling, and I had no idea how to stop it. The confrontation left me shaken, but not any closer to answers. Lily had retreated to the bedroom after promising an explanation she still hadn't delivered. Meanwhile, my thoughts churned with questions I couldn't begin to untangle. Who was that man? What was he helping her with? And what was in the folder she'd taken? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent hours reviewing the footage from the hidden cameras, searching for anything I might have missed. It felt invasive, wrong even, but I couldn't stop myself. I needed to know what was going on, and clearly, Lily wasn't going to tell me. It wasn't long before I found something new. The living room camera had captured another meeting, earlier that day while I was at work. The same man had returned, and this time, their conversation was less guarded. "Phase 1 is complete," the man said, handing her a small USB drive. "Make sure it's secure." Lily nodded, slipping the drive into her bag. "And the timeline?" she asked. "Still on track," he replied. "But we can't afford any mistakes. Keep an eye on him." "I will," she said, her voice steady. "He's suspicious, but he doesn't know anything yet." "Good. Let's keep it that way." They exchanged a glance, and then he left, as calm and confident as ever. Lily stood by the door for a moment, staring after him, before heading upstairs. I paused the footage, my heart pounding. Keep an eye on him. They had been talking about me. Whatever this phase 1 was, I was clearly a part of it, a part Lily had been keeping from me. I rewound the video, watching it again and again, trying to glean any additional information. The USB drive caught my attention. Where had she hidden it? If I could find it, maybe I'd finally get some answers. The next day, while Lily was out, I began my search. I tore through her usual hiding spots, rifling through drawers, closets, and even her car. Nothing. Frustrated, I slumped onto the couch, my mind racing. That's when I noticed the vase. It was a decorative piece that sat on a high shelf in the living room, something Lily had bought years ago during one of her decorating phases. She rarely touched it, but now, it seemed oddly out of place. The angle was slightly off, as if it had been moved recently. Climbing onto the couch, I carefully lifted the vase. Sure enough, the USB drive was tucked inside. My hands trembled as I pulled it out, holding it like a forbidden artifact. What was on this little device that was worth all the secrecy? I didn't have to wait long to find out. Plugging it into my laptop, I opened the drive and found a single folder labeled Project Eclipse. Inside were several files, including documents, spreadsheets, and video recordings. The first document was a list of names, the same list I'd seen in the folder I'd found earlier. Beside each name were details, dates, locations, financial transactions. It looked like some kind of network, but of what, I couldn't say. The videos were even more disturbing. One showed a meeting in a dimly lit room, where several people discussed plans that sounded ominous but vague, contingencies, targets, and eliminating loose ends. Another was surveillance footage of a man I didn't recognize, taken from a distance. He looked nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder. Then there was a photo, a candid shot of me, taken outside our house. The timestamp was recent, just a week ago. Seeing myself on that screen, oblivious to whoever had been watching me, sent a chill down my spine. I couldn't piece it all together, but one thing was clear, Lily was involved in something dangerous, and now, so was I. That evening, I tried to act normal. Lily seemed tense but otherwise unchanged, going through the motions of dinner and small talk. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I held back. If she had been lying to me this whole time, could I trust anything she said now? Instead, I returned to my office and sent copies of the USB files to a secure cloud account. I didn't know what I was dealing with yet, but I wasn't going to take any chances. The cameras had caught more than I ever expected. And somehow, I knew this was just the beginning. The information on the USB drive consumed my every thought. It was like a puzzle with missing pieces, each file revealing just enough to deepen the mystery but not enough to make sense of it. The names, the financial transactions, the cryptic meetings, what did it all mean? And how was Lily involved? I needed help. I couldn't unravel this on my own, and I couldn't risk confronting Lily again without understanding the full scope of what she was hiding. So, I reached out to someone I trusted completely, my old friend and former military comrade, Jack Hayes. Jack and I had served together years ago, and while I had moved on to civilian life, Jack had stayed closer to the shadows, taking on private security and intelligence work. If anyone could help me navigate this maze of secrets, it was him. When I called, he didn't hesitate. "I'll be there in an hour," he said, his tone as steady no-nonsense as I remembered. When Jack arrived, I laid everything on the table, the footage, the documents, the USB drive. He listened intently, his sharp blue eyes scanning every page. Finally, he leaned back, his expression grim. "This is serious," he said. "If these transactions are real, you're looking at a network of some kind. Could be criminal, fraud, money laundering, maybe worse." "And Lily?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jack hesitated, then nodded. "She's involved, no doubt about it. The question is whether she's in over her head or fully complicit. Either way, we need to find out." We agreed on a plan. Jack would tail Lily, track her movements, and dig into the people she was meeting with. In the meantime, I'd continue monitoring the cameras and gathering whatever information I could. It felt underhanded, invasive, but the stakes were too high to worry about morality. The first few days yielded little. Lily's routine seemed normal: work, errands, occasional evenings out with friends. But then, Jack called me late one night with an update that made my blood run cold. "She's meeting with multiple people," he said. "Strange hours, odd locations. A coffee shop across town, a parking garage, even a park after dark. And she's making cash withdrawals, large ones." "How large?" I asked, gripping the phone tightly. "Thousands at a time. And she's not depositing it anywhere I can trace. She's handing it off. Handing it off." The phrase hit me like a punch to the gut. I imagined her slipping wads of cash to the man from the cameras, funding whatever shadowy operation they were running. Was this what she meant by Phase 1? Jack's surveillance also uncovered another unsettling detail. One of the people Lily met with was a woman in her late 40s, sharply dressed and exuding authority. Jack managed to snap a photo, which he sent to me. I didn't recognize her, but something about her presence screamed importance. "She's not just a middleman," Jack said. "She's someone higher up. Maybe even running the show." I stared at the photo for what felt like hours, memorizing the woman's face. If Lily was answering to her, what did that make my wife? A pawn? A partner? The next few days brought more revelations. Jack traced the cash withdrawals to an offshore account linked to one of the names on the USB list. The account belonged to a shell company, its true owner hidden behind layers of bureaucracy. The deeper we dug, the more tangled the web became. Meanwhile, Lily's behavior at home remained eerily normal. She laughed at my jokes, kissed me goodnight, even made plans for a weekend getaway. It was as if nothing had changed. But every time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the image of her slipping cash to strangers in dark parking lots. One evening, while she was out, I reviewed the latest footage from the cameras. The man from the earlier meetings had returned, this time staying longer than usual. Their conversation was muffled, but I caught fragments: contingency plans, final phase, and no loose ends. No loose ends. The phrase sent a chill down my spine. What were they planning? And who were they planning it against? Jack's next call brought more bad news. The people she's meeting with? They're connected to recent disappearances in the city. Disappearances? My voice cracked. What do you mean? Unsolved cases. People vanishing without a trace. There's no solid link yet, but some of the names from that USB drive? They match up with the missing persons reports. I sat in stunned silence, the weight of his words sinking in. This was no longer just about Lily's betrayal. This was something far darker, far more dangerous than I could have imagined. What do I do? I finally asked, my voice barely audible. Jack paused. We keep digging. But be careful. Whatever this is, it's bigger than both of us. The web was expanding, and I was caught in its center. For the first time, I realized that uncovering the truth might not just cost me my marriage, it might cost me my life. The deeper Jack and I delved into Lily's hidden life, the clearer it became that whatever Phase 1 was, it wasn't just a small piece of the puzzle, it was the linchpin. And it was tied to the USB drive, the shadowy meetings, and the growing sense of danger that loomed over both of us. One evening, Jack showed up at my house with a grim expression and a stack of papers. I've been doing some digging, he said, dropping the files onto the kitchen table. And I think I've got something. I leaned forward, my hands already trembling. What is it? Jack flipped through the pages, pointing to a document that listed a series of transactions and shipments. Your wife's meetings, the cash handoffs, the offshore accounts, it's all connected to this. These are logistics records for moving something, but they're coded. It's not money, and it's not drugs. Then what is it? I asked, my throat dry. Jack hesitated, meeting my eyes. I think it's people. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. People? I echoed, barely able to process it. He nodded. Human trafficking. It's big money, and these operations are complex. Your wife's role seems to be as an intermediary, someone with a clean record who can't be traced back to the organization. My stomach churned, and I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. The thought of Lily, my Lily, being involved in something so vile was incomprehensible. But then I remembered the look on her face during her meetings, the cash withdrawals, the USB drive with its ominous files. It all fit. Why her? I asked. Why would they choose her? Jack shrugged. She's trustworthy on paper. Clean credit history, no criminal record, steady job. She's the perfect cover. But she's not a criminal, I said, my voice breaking. She wouldn't do this willingly. Maybe not, Jack said carefully. But people get coerced. Threatened. Sometimes they think they don't have a choice. I felt a sliver of hope. Maybe Lily wasn't complicit. Maybe she was trapped. But if that were true, why hadn't she told me? Why hadn't she asked for my help? We need more, Jack said, breaking the silence. There's a lot here, but nothing solid enough to go to the authorities. We need something definitive. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every clue. Jack's words echoed in my mind, human trafficking. The very thought made my skin crawl. But no matter how much I wanted to believe that Lily was innocent, the evidence was piling up against her. The next morning, I went through her things again, desperate for anything that might give me answers. That's when I found the notebook. It was small, tucked into the back of a drawer in her desk. The pages were filled with notes and sketches, some of them so cryptic I couldn't make sense of them. But one word kept appearing over and over, eclipse. I showed it to Jack later that day. What does it mean? I asked. He frowned, flipping through the pages. Eclipse could be a codename, a project, or even the name of the operation itself. Whatever it is, it's central to what's going on. We pored over the notebook, dissecting every detail. One sketch caught Jack's attention, a map with several locations marked. Some were in the city, while others were in more remote areas. One of them was circled in red, with the date, Saturday, written next to it. This is it, Jack said, tapping the page. She's going there. We need to find out why. Saturday came faster than I expected. Jack and I parked a safe distance from the location on the map, a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of town. We watched as cars pulled in one by one, including Lily's. She stepped out, carrying a bag that looked heavy. My heart ached as I watched her walk toward the warehouse, her posture tense but determined. Jack put a hand on my shoulder, grounding me. Stay here, he said. I'll go in and see what's happening. No, I said firmly. I need to see this for myself. Reluctantly, he nodded, and together we approached the building. What we saw inside would change everything. The warehouse was burned into my memory long before we stepped inside. Jack and I had spent hours watching from the shadows as cars arrived and left. Each movement deepened the pit in my stomach. Whatever was happening here, it wasn't innocent. When the crowd thinned, we decided to move closer. Jack's military instincts took over, guiding us around blind spots and keeping us concealed. I followed, my breath shallow and my heart hammering in my chest. Finally, we found a vantage point through a cracked window. Inside, Lily stood in a circle of people, her face pale but composed. She handed over the heavy bag I had seen earlier, and a man in a dark suit opened it, revealing bundles of cash. The group murmured in approval before passing her a slim folder in return. She nodded, tucking it under her arm. The scene was too much. My chest tightened as a surge of betrayal and despair washed over me. Jack, sensing my turmoil, grabbed my arm. "Stay focused," he whispered. "We can't blow our cover now." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. We stayed hidden until the meeting ended and the group began to disperse. Lily was one of the last to leave, driving away alone in her car. Jack and I slipped back to our vehicle, but the silence between us was heavy. The folder. That was our next clue. Whatever was inside had to be critical. The following morning, I woke to an anonymous email in my inbox. The subject line read, "Stop digging." My stomach flipped as I opened it. Inside was a blurry photo of me at the warehouse, crouched next to Jack. My blood ran cold. The message continued. "This isn't what you think. Walk away, or there will be consequences." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Someone had seen us. Someone knew we were there. I forwarded the email to Jack, my hands shaking, and called him immediately. "We've been made," I said as soon as he picked up. "I saw it," he replied, his tone grim. "Whoever sent this isn't bluffing. They're watching you. What do we do?" Jack's pause was long enough to make my anxiety spike. "We need to keep moving, but we have to be smart. Whoever's behind this has resources. They're trying to scare you off. Question is, are you scared?" I thought about Lily. About the folder. About the people at that warehouse. "No," I said, though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. "I need answers. Whatever it takes." Jack sighed, but there was a note of approval in it. "All right. We keep going, but we stay careful. No more direct surveillance. We need to get that folder." That night, Lily came home later than usual. She seemed distracted, her answers to my questions vague and hurried. I watched her closely, my mind buzzing with the memory of the warehouse and the ominous email. After she went to bed, I crept into her office. The folder was there, tucked neatly into her desk. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing pages of typed documents, maps, and photographs. One image made my breath catch. It was a picture of me, taken outside my office weeks earlier. The caption beneath it read, "Target observation." Target? Observation? My head spun as I scanned the rest of the pages. They detailed movements, routines, and vulnerabilities. It wasn't just about me, there were profiles on others, too. Strangers, each labeled with codenames and cryptic notes. I snapped photos of everything before returning the folder to its place. Back in my room, I sent the pictures to Jack, each one filling me with more dread than the last. When his reply finally came, it was just 3 words. "You're in danger." Danger. The word echoed in my mind as I stared at the ceiling, sleep an impossible task. The warning email, the folder, the photographs, they all pointed to one terrifying truth: I wasn't just an observer in this twisted game. I was a target. Morning couldn't come fast enough. I needed to act, but every step forward seemed to uncover new threats. Jack's advice rang in my ears: stay careful, stay focused. But the question loomed larger than ever: could I uncover the truth without losing everything? I couldn't wait any longer. The warning email, the folder, and the chilling realization that I was a target had pushed me to my limit. I needed answers, and I needed them now. For days, I had danced around the truth, hoping for clarity, but every step forward only revealed new shadows. It was time to face Lily. That evening, as we sat across from each other at the dinner table, I could barely touch my food. Lily's usual calm demeanor grated on me, her small talk feeling like a cruel farce. Finally, I couldn't hold back anymore. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low but firm. She paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. "What about?" "About you. About what you've been doing." About the lies. Her expression shifted, a flicker of something, fear, perhaps, crossing her face. She set her fork down carefully. Ethan, what are you talking about? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay composed. I know about the meetings. The cash. The people you've been meeting with. She froze, her eyes widening. For a moment, it looked like she might deny everything. But then her shoulders sagged, and she let out a shaky breath. I was hoping you wouldn't find out, she said quietly. My stomach twisted. Find out what? That you're involved in something dangerous. That you've been lying to me. It's not what you think, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't have a choice, Ethan. I'm trying to protect you. I slammed my hand on the table, the sound startling us both. Protect me? From what? Who are these people, Lily? And why the hell am I a target? She flinched, tears welling up in her eyes. I never wanted this to happen. They're forcing me to do this. If I don't cooperate, they said they'd hurt you. They'd hurt us. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to believe her, but after everything I'd uncovered, doubt clung to me like a second skin. Who are they? I asked, my voice quieter now. What do they want? Lily hesitated, her hands gripping the edge of the table. They're a syndicate. They run operations, illegal ones. Fraud, smuggling, worse. I got involved because they needed someone with a clean record. Someone who wouldn't draw attention. And you said yes. I couldn't hide the bitterness in my tone. Why didn't you come to me? Because they knew everything about us, she said, her voice cracking. About you, about your job. They threatened to destroy everything if I didn't cooperate. I thought I could handle it, that I could keep you safe. But it's spiraling out of control. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. The pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed was far darker than I'd anticipated. What's phase 1? I asked. Lily's face paled. How do you know about that? Don't deflect, I said sharply. Tell me. She looked away, her hands trembling. It's their operation. Moving people, money, and other things. I don't know all the details. I just handle the logistics they give me. Other things? My voice rose. Are we talking about trafficking? Are you helping them move people? Her silence was answer enough. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. God damn it, Lily. Do you realize what you've gotten into? What you've dragged me into? Tears streamed down her face as she stood, reaching for me. Ethan, please. I'm trying to fix this. I swear. I didn't want this. I stepped back, shaking my head. You need to tell me everything. Now. No more lies, no more half-truths. If we're going to get out of this, I need to know exactly what we're up against. She nodded, wiping her tears. Okay. I'll tell you everything. But you have to promise me one thing. What? Promise me you won't try to take them on alone. These people, they're not just criminals. They're killers. If you push them too far, they won't hesitate to make good on their threats. I didn't answer. My mind was already racing ahead, trying to form a plan. Whatever Lily had gotten herself into, it wasn't just her problem anymore. It was mine too. And I wasn't about to let these bastards destroy our lives. The days that followed Lily's confession were a whirlwind of revelations and growing dread. True to her word, she began to tell me everything she knew about the syndicate, though it became clear that even she was kept in the dark about its full scope. They operate in cells, she explained one night, her voice trembling. Each group knows just enough to do their part, but no one has the whole picture. It's how they stay protected. The names on the USB drive began to make sense. Lily identified some of them as members of her cell, while others were contacts she only interacted with indirectly. The syndicate structure was meticulous, designed to avoid detection and ensure that even if one piece fell, the rest of the network would remain intact. "And this woman you've been meeting," I pressed. "The one Jack photographed? Who is she?" Lily hesitated. "Her name is Evelyn. She's higher up. Not at the top, but close enough to pull strings. She's the one who oversees my cell." "Does she know about me?" I asked, the memory of the target observation photo still fresh in my mind. Lily nodded reluctantly. "Yes. She's the one who made it clear that if I didn't cooperate, you'd pay the price." The thought of Evelyn's cold, calculating gaze sent a shiver down my spine. I had never met her, but she already felt like a specter looming over my life, a puppet master pulling strings from the shadows. Jack and I worked tirelessly to piece together what we could about the syndicate. With Lily's help, we began mapping connections between names, locations, and transactions. The deeper we dug, the more alarming the picture became. The syndicate wasn't just involved in one criminal enterprise. They were a multifaceted operation, engaging in human trafficking, financial fraud, and even weapons smuggling. Their reach extended far beyond our city, with tentacles stretching into neighboring states and even overseas. One night, as Jack and I pored over our findings, he looked up from the map we had spread across my dining table. "This isn't just a network," he said, his voice grim. "It's an empire." I swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling on my chest. "How do we fight something like this?" Jack leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "We don't take on the whole thing. We focus on one part. We find a weak link, something we can exploit." Lily's voice cut through the tension. She had been sitting quietly, listening to us strategize. "Evelyn is the weak link," she said. Jack raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "She's not invincible," Lily said. "She's careful, yes, but she's also vain. She likes to flaunt her power, to remind everyone she's in control. If we can find a way to expose her, the rest of the syndicate might collapse around her." It was a dangerous proposition, but it was the best lead we had. Jack began digging into Evelyn's background, using every resource at his disposal to unearth anything we could use against her. Meanwhile, I focused on gaining Lily's trust and ensuring her safety. Despite everything, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still holding something back. That feeling was validated one evening when Jack called me with an urgent tone in his voice. "We've got a problem," he said. "I've been monitoring some of Evelyn's communications. She knows about our digging. And she's not happy." My heart sank. "What does that mean?" "It means she's making moves," Jack replied. "She's pulling people in, consolidating power. I think she's preparing for something big." Lily's reaction to the news was immediate and visceral. "She's going to shut it down," she said, her voice laced with panic. "If she thinks there's a risk of exposure, she'll cut ties, eliminate threats, and disappear." "Eliminate threats?" I repeated, my blood running cold. Lily nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "That includes us." The room fell silent as the gravity of her words sank in. Evelyn wasn't just a weak link, she was a cornered animal. And cornered animals were the most dangerous of all. "What do we do?" I asked, looking to Jack for guidance. He exhaled sharply, his jaw tightening. "We move fast. If Evelyn's preparing for a cleanup, we need to hit her before she has the chance. We need evidence that ties her directly to the syndicate's operations." Lily's voice was barely above a whisper. "That's going to mean confronting her. Face to face." The thought of standing in the same room as Evelyn sent a shiver down my spine, but I knew she was right. If we wanted to end this, we had to go straight to the source. The question was whether we'd survive the encounter. The tension in the air was suffocating. Days of planning had left us exhausted but no closer to a clear way out. Jack and I knew Evelyn was the key, but she remained an enigma, a shadow we couldn't pin down. The more we uncovered about the syndicate, the more monstrous it seemed. It wasn't just a criminal enterprise, it was a machine, grinding up lives and spitting out power and profit. Then Jack delivered a revelation that changed everything. It started with a late-night phone call. I was sitting in my office, staring blankly at the map of connections we'd pieced together, when Jack's name lit up my screen. I answered immediately, bracing for bad news. "Ethan," Jack said, his voice grim. "I found something. You're not going to like it." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "It's about Evelyn," he said. "She's not just a cog in the machine. She's the one who built it. Evelyn doesn't just run this cell, she's the architect of the entire operation." The words hit me like a freight train. I gripped the edge of my desk, my mind racing. "You're saying she's at the top? The syndicate's leader?" "Not the leader," Jack clarified. "There's always someone higher up in these kinds of organizations. But she's damn close. She oversees multiple cells, maybe even the whole regional network. Taking her down wouldn't just disrupt this operation, it could collapse the entire structure." I struggled to process the implications. Evelyn wasn't just some dangerous intermediary. She was a mastermind, someone who had orchestrated countless crimes and wielded influence like a weapon. And she had my wife under her thumb. "There's more," Jack continued, his tone heavy. I dug into her background. Evelyn isn't her real name. She's using an alias, but her real identity, he trailed off, as if unsure how to say it. "Spit it out, Jack," I said, my patience fraying. "She's connected to Lily," he said. "They have a history." My heart skipped a beat. "What kind of history?" Jack hesitated, then said, "They used to work together. Years ago, before you and Lily met. Evelyn was Lily's boss at some non-profit. It looks like she's been keeping tabs on her ever since." The room spun around me. The idea that Evelyn had known Lily for years, that she had deliberately drawn her into this nightmare, was almost too much to bear. "Why?" I demanded. "Why would she do that?" "Leverage," Jack said simply. "Lily's clean record, her connections, she was the perfect pawn. Evelyn groomed her for this role. She probably never intended to let her go." Anger surged through me, hot and consuming. Evelyn had used my wife, manipulated her, and now had us both ensnared in her web. It was clear that taking her down wasn't just about survival anymore. It was personal. Jack's voice broke through my thoughts. "I found something else. Evelyn's planning a meeting. Big players, high stakes. If we can get in, we might find the evidence we need to expose her." "When?" I asked, my jaw tightening. "Saturday night," he said. "At a private estate outside the city. It's invitation only, tight security. But I think we can make it work." "We?" I repeated. "You're in this now, Ethan," Jack said firmly. "And you're the best shot we have at getting close to Evelyn. Lily's connection to her gives us an opening. But it's going to be dangerous." I didn't hesitate. "Tell me what I need to do." Jack laid out the plan, each step more precarious than the last. We'd need to create a believable reason for me to be at the meeting, something that wouldn't raise suspicion. Jack would provide backup, staying in the shadows, ready to intervene if things went south. When I told Lily about the plan, her reaction was a mix of fear and desperation. "You can't," she said, her voice breaking. "If Evelyn suspects anything, she'll kill you. She'll kill us both. If we don't do this, she wins," I said. "She keeps her empire, and we stay her pawns. I'm not willing to live like that." Lily's tears fell freely, but she didn't argue. She knew I was right. Saturday night loomed like a storm on the horizon. The plan was set, the risks understood. But as I prepared to face Evelyn and the monstrous network she had built, one question lingered in my mind. Would this be the moment we brought her down, or the moment we lost everything? The night of the meeting arrived faster than I expected. Every moment leading up to it felt surreal, like walking through a haze where every sound and motion was magnified. Jack and I had prepared meticulously, but no amount of planning could fully extinguish the fear gnawing at the edges of my mind. The estate where the meeting was taking place was a fortress. High walls, security cameras, and guards patrolling the perimeter made it clear that Evelyn and her associates didn't take chances. Jack had secured me a forged invitation under the guise of a new recruit, a calculated risk, but our only shot at getting close to Evelyn. I arrived alone, dressed in a tailored suit that Jack had insisted on to blend in. The guards at the gate scanned my invitation and, after a tense moment, waved me through. My heart pounded as I stepped inside, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. But I couldn't. Not now. The interior of the estate was opulent, a stark contrast to the darkness that festered within its walls. Men and women in expensive clothing mingled, their conversations carrying an air of casual menace. It was a masquerade of power, and Evelyn was its queen. She spotted me almost immediately. Tall and poised, she commanded the room with an effortless authority that sent a chill down my spine. Her sharp eyes locked onto mine, and a faint smile curved her lips as she approached. "Mr. Reynolds, isn't it?" she said smoothly, extending a hand. "That's right," I replied, gripping her hand briefly. My voice was steady, but my palms were damp. "Welcome," Evelyn said, her tone polite but probing. "I hear you've been quite eager to join our endeavors." I forced a smile, playing along. "It's an honor to be here. I've heard impressive things about your organization." Her eyes flickered with amusement. "I'm sure you have." She didn't linger, moving on to greet other guests, but I felt her presence like a shadow lingering just out of reach. Jack's voice buzzed softly in my earpiece. "You're doing fine," he said. "Just stick to the plan." The plan. My role was simple: observe, blend in, and gather as much information as I could. Jack was monitoring from a distance, ready to pull me out if things went sideways. As the evening progressed, I managed to overhear snippets of conversations, references to Phase 2, mentions of shipments, and veiled allusions to powerful allies. But it wasn't until Evelyn took the floor to address the group that the real bombshell dropped. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice commanding immediate silence. "Our operation is stronger than ever, thanks to your dedication and discretion. Tonight, we take the next step in ensuring our dominance. Phase 2 will not only solidify our position but eliminate any distractions." There was a ripple of approval from the crowd, but her words sent a shiver down my spine. Distractions. Was she referring to us? To Lily? Evelyn's gaze swept the room, and for a fleeting moment, her eyes met mine. I froze, certain she could see through my facade. But then her smile widened, and she continued. "To those who have proven their loyalty," she said, raising a glass, "your efforts will be rewarded. And to those who would betray us," her tone turned icy, "there are no second chances." The room erupted in applause, but I could barely hear it over the sound of my racing heart. Evelyn knew. She had to. Every instinct screamed that my cover was on the verge of being blown. Jack's voice crackled in my ear. "Ethan, get out of there. Now." I turned to leave, but before I could take a step, a hand clamped down on my shoulder. I spun around to face a man I didn't recognize, broad, imposing, and radiating menace. "Ms. Evelyn would like a word," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. My mouth went dry as he guided me toward a private room at the back of the estate. The door closed behind us with a soft click, and I was alone with Evelyn. She regarded me coolly, her sharp features betraying no emotion. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. "Why don't you tell me who you really are?" Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to remain still. "I don't know what you mean," I said, feigning confusion. Evelyn's smile was razor-thin. "Let's not waste each other's time. You think I didn't notice you snooping around? You and your little friend watching from the shadows?" I didn't respond, my mind scrambling for a way out. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Whatever you think you're doing, it ends tonight. Walk away, Mr. Reynolds, while you still can." Her words hung in the air like a guillotine. For a moment, I considered the option, to run, to leave this nightmare behind. But then I thought of Lily, of the people this syndicate had hurt, and of the lives they would destroy if no one stopped them. I met Evelyn's gaze, my fear giving way to resolve. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice steady. Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes darkened. "Then I'll make sure you regret it." Evelyn's words echoed in my mind as I left the private room. The promise of regret, the thinly veiled threat, it all solidified the truth I had been dreading. This wasn't just a criminal operation, it was a full-blown conspiracy, and Evelyn was the architect of its sinister machinery. Jack's voice buzzed in my earpiece as I made my way to the estate's exit. "Ethan, are you out? What happened?" "She knows," I whispered, glancing over my shoulder. Guards milled about, their sharp eyes scanning the crowd. "She knew the moment I walked in. I'm lucky she didn't have me killed on the spot." "Get out of there," Jack said firmly. "We'll regroup and figure out our next move." I didn't need convincing. The tension in the air was palpable as I slipped into the night, careful not to draw attention to myself. My car felt like a sanctuary when I finally slid into the driver's seat. With shaking hands, I started the engine and drove, putting as much distance as I could between me and Evelyn's fortress. Back at Jack's safe house, the weight of the evening pressed down on me. Lily sat across the room, her face pale and drawn. Jack had filled her in on what little he knew, but the details I shared painted an even darker picture. "She's planning something big," I said, pacing the small space. "This phase 2 isn't just about keeping the operation running, it's about eliminating threats. That means us." Lily's hands trembled as she clasped them together. "She won't stop until we're dead. She's too paranoid to let us walk away." "Then we don't walk away," Jack interjected, his voice steely. "We take her down before she can make her move." "How?" I asked, frustration bubbling to the surface. "We've been a step behind her this whole time. She's got resources, connections, hell, she probably owns half the city." Jack's expression hardened. "Not half the city. Just enough to scare people into silence. But she's not untouchable. No one is. We've got evidence, and we've got you." "Me?" Jack nodded. "Evelyn's been keeping tabs on you for a reason. You're part of her contingency plan, whether you like it or not. We use that to our advantage." Lily's eyes widened. "No. It's too dangerous. She'll see it coming." "She already sees it coming," Jack countered. "But she doesn't know how far we're willing to go. That's our edge." The plan Jack laid out was audacious, a high-stakes gamble that relied on speed, precision, and a healthy dose of luck. Using the data we had collected, names, transactions, locations, we would expose Evelyn's operation to the authorities. But it wouldn't be enough to just hand over the evidence. Evelyn's influence ran deep, and we needed to ensure there was no escape for her or her accomplices. "We hit her where it hurts," Jack said, pointing to the map we'd spread across the table. "Her communication hubs, her financial networks, her safe houses. We take them down one by one, fast and loud. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late for her to cover her tracks." "And what about me?" Lily asked quietly. Jack's gaze softened. "You stay out of it. The best thing you can do is stay safe and out of sight. Ethan and I will handle the rest. Lily's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't argue. She knew as well as I did that Jack's plan was our best shot, and possibly our last. The first strike came 2 nights later. Jack and I targeted a warehouse where Evelyn's cell stored sensitive records and equipment. Armed with the knowledge Lily had shared and the intel Jack had gathered, we moved swiftly, planting devices to siphon data while ensuring the location was flagged for a police raid. It worked. The raid made headlines the next morning, though the true significance of the bust was buried under layers of bureaucracy and legalese. But Evelyn would know. She would feel the pressure tightening around her. Over the next week, we hit 3 more targets. Each one yielded more evidence, more connections to Evelyn's operation. But with every victory came a new risk. Her guards were more vigilant, her movements more erratic. We were closing in, but so was she. The tipping point came when Jack intercepted a coded message from Evelyn's network. "They're planning a final meeting," he said, his eyes scanning the decrypted text. "She's consolidating what's left of her power. If we're going to end this, it has to be there." "Where?" I asked, already steeling myself for what was to come. Jack pointed to the map, his finger landing on a remote estate outside the city. "Here. Saturday night." The date sent a chill through me. It was exactly 1 year since Lily and I had first started noticing the cracks in our life. Now, everything was coming to a head. As the night approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that Evelyn had planned it this way, that she was always 1 step ahead. But as I prepared for the confrontation to come, I made a promise to myself. No matter what it took, I would see this through. Evelyn's reign would end, and Lily and I would finally be free. The days leading up to Saturday were a blur of preparation and mounting tension. Jack and I worked tirelessly to refine our plan, knowing that this final move was our only chance to take Evelyn down. The risks were enormous, but so were the stakes. This wasn't just about ending her operation, it was about reclaiming our lives. Lily stayed hidden at Jack's safe house, the weight of everything crushing her spirit. She tried to convince me to let her help, but Jack and I had been firm. Evelyn had already used her as a pawn, we wouldn't let her become collateral damage. On the night of the meeting, Jack and I arrived early, blending into the shadows around the remote estate. The property was sprawling, its vast grounds illuminated by floodlights and patrolled by armed guards. Evelyn's paranoia was on full display, but it also meant she was vulnerable. She believed her fortress was impenetrable, and that arrogance was our opening. "We stick to the plan," Jack whispered as we crouched behind a line of hedges. "Get in, gather the evidence, and signal the authorities. No heroics, Ethan." I nodded, though my resolve was anything but calm. This wasn't just about evidence anymore. Evelyn had made this personal, and I wasn't leaving until I ensured she couldn't hurt anyone else. We made our move when a delivery truck pulled up to the gates. As the guards inspected its contents, Jack and I slipped through an unguarded section of the fence, using the shadows to conceal our approach. Inside, the estate was alive with activity. Cars lined the driveway, their owners gathered in clusters under the grand portico, sipping expensive drinks and trading veiled threats disguised as pleasantries. Evelyn's meeting wasn't just a gathering of her inner circle, it was a show of power. She was rallying her allies, consolidating her empire in the face of our attacks. But she didn't know we were already inside her gates. Jack and I split up, each with a specific target. He would access the estate's communication hub to intercept and record incriminating transmissions, while I would infiltrate Evelyn's office to retrieve physical evidence, documents, ledgers, anything that could tie her to the syndicate's crimes. The tension was suffocating as I crept through the halls, my heart pounding with every step. The estate was a labyrinth of opulence, each room more extravagant than the last. But my focus remained sharp, guided by the mental map Lily had helped us create from her memories. When I reached Evelyn's office, I hesitated for only a moment before slipping inside. The room was exactly as Lily had described, dark wood paneling, shelves lined with leather-bound books, and a massive desk dominating the space. It was a shrine to power, every detail meticulously curated. I moved quickly, scanning the desk for anything useful. Drawers yielded a treasure trove of damning evidence, financial records, coded correspondence, even a list of names that matched the ones we'd found on the USB drive. Each document was a nail in Evelyn's coffin, and I photographed everything, my hands trembling with adrenaline. Then I heard footsteps. I froze, my breath catching in my throat as the door creaked open. Evelyn stepped inside, her sharp features illuminated by the soft glow of a desk lamp. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then her lips curved into a cold smile. "I knew you'd come," she said, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "You're predictable, Ethan. Just like your wife." Anger flared in my chest, but I forced myself to remain calm. "It's over, Evelyn," I said, holding her gaze. "We have everything we need to expose you." Her laughter was low and mocking. "Expose me? To whom? The authorities? Half of them are on my payroll. You think you've won because you've gathered a few scraps of paper. You have no idea what you're up against." She took a step closer, her confidence radiating like a weapon. "But let me make you an offer, Ethan. Walk away. Take Lily and disappear. I'll even let you keep breathing, which is more mercy than you deserve." I didn't flinch. "You don't scare me, Evelyn. And you don't get to dictate the terms anymore." Her expression darkened, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her armor. She was used to control, to power. The realization that she might lose it was enough to unsettle her. Before she could respond, the sound of distant commotion reached us. Jack's signal. The authorities were moving in, their raid coordinated with the data Jack had transmitted from the communication hub. Evelyn's empire was crumbling, and she knew it. She lunged for a drawer, her hand closing around a sleek pistol. But I was faster. With a surge of adrenaline, I knocked the weapon from her grasp and pinned her against the desk. For a moment, we struggled, her sharp nails clawing at my arms, but I held firm. "It's over," I said through gritted teeth. The sound of boots pounding down the hall signaled the arrival of law enforcement. I released Evelyn just as the door burst open, officers flooding the room with weapons drawn. She was hauled away, her protests falling on deaf ears. As I stepped into the cool night air, Jack joined me, his expression grim but victorious. "We did it," he said simply. But as I looked back at the estate, now swarming with law enforcement, I couldn't shake the feeling that this victory came at a cost. Evelyn's empire was shattered, but the scars she'd left on our lives would take far longer to heal. The aftermath of Evelyn's downfall felt like a surreal haze. Her empire had been dismantled, her inner circle arrested, and her influence reduced to ash. The authorities praised our efforts, and Jack's meticulous planning had ensured our safety throughout the raid. By all accounts, we had won. But something lingered in the back of my mind, a thread of unease I couldn't shake. Lily and I returned to the safe house, the tension between us as thick as ever. She had been distant since the raid, her guilt and shame a wall I couldn't break through. Jack had gone silent too, retreating to his own thoughts as he sifted through the remnants of Evelyn's network. I wanted to believe it was over, but deep down, I knew there was more to the story. That more arrived in the form of a package. A few days after the raid, a small, nondescript box was delivered to the safe house. No return address. No markings. Just my name scrawled in black ink across the top. My stomach churned as I opened it, revealing a single USB drive and a note that read, "The truth isn't always what it seems." Jack and Lily watched as I plugged the drive into my laptop. The screen flickered, and a folder appeared, its contents labeled with chilling precision. Videos, emails, and surveillance reports filled the screen. At first, it seemed like more evidence against Evelyn, but then I saw it, a series of recordings of Lily. The first showed her meeting with Evelyn, their conversation inaudible but their body language unmistakably collaborative. Another clip showed her handing over documents, her expression calm and focused. And then, the final blow, a video of Lily alone in our home, recording a message. "Evelyn," she said, her voice steady. "Everything is going according to plan. He doesn't suspect a thing." I recoiled, my blood running cold. The screen blurred as tears filled my eyes. "Ethan, wait," Lily said, reaching for me. "It's not what you think." "Not what I think." I spat, standing abruptly. "You've been lying to me this entire time. Working with her. Playing me like a goddamned fool." "She forced me," Lily said desperately. "Evelyn threatened you. She said if I didn't cooperate, you'd be the one to pay the price. I had to do it, Ethan. I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice," I said bitterly. "And you chose to betray me." Jack stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Ethan, let's take a step back. There's more going on here than we understand. We need to figure out who sent this package and why." I nodded, though my trust in anyone, even Jack, was now tenuous at best. Together, we examined the USB drive's metadata, tracing its origin to a remote server. Jack's expertise quickly uncovered its source, an anonymous whistleblower within Evelyn's syndicate. They had sent the files as both a warning and a weapon, exposing Evelyn's manipulation of Lily and others. The recordings told a twisted tale. Evelyn had indeed coerced Lily, leveraging threats and fear to ensure her compliance. But as the videos progressed, it became clear that Lily had begun to resist. In the final clip, she confronted Evelyn, her voice shaking but resolute. "I'm done," Lily said. "You won't use me anymore." Evelyn's response was chilling. "You don't get to decide when this ends, Lily. You're in this until I say otherwise." I sat in silence, the weight of the truth crushing me. Lily had been trapped, manipulated, and forced into an impossible situation. But her decisions, her silence, had still cost us both dearly. "I didn't want to hurt you," Lily said quietly, tears streaming down her face. "Everything I did was to protect you." I looked at her, my heart torn between love and betrayal. "And now?" I asked. "What happens now?" She didn't answer, and in that silence, I knew the damage between us might never be repaired. Evelyn was gone, her empire destroyed, but the scars she'd left on our lives would never fully heal. As the days passed, I found myself retreating further into solitude, unsure of how to move forward. Jack tried to help, offering words of wisdom and reminders of what we had accomplished. But even he knew that some wounds ran too deep to be mended. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat alone with the USB drive in my hand. It had brought clarity, but at a cost. The truth, as the note had warned, wasn't what it seemed. It was darker, more painful, and more complicated than I had ever imagined. Lily and I had survived Evelyn, but we hadn't survived each other. And as I stared at the last rays of light fading from the sky, I realized that survival wasn't the same as living. The battle was over, but the war within me was just beginning. Subscribe to our channel so your significant other never dares to cheat on you. And don't miss the next story, it's even more shocking than this one.